All right, let's talk college football here on today's show. Another incredible week. 2 weeks ago, you had one of the best weeks of all time. Last week on paper wasn't great, but there was still crazy good games, as there always is. And there's going to be some more good ones here this weekend. We got 5 games that I do want to preview here on today's show. And we'll start with the 2 noon games. Ohio State at Illinois in our college football top 10 that we do every week. I got Ohio State at 1. Candidly, I don't think it is very close. I think Oregon and Miami are good. We'll talk about Oregon in a little bit, but I don't think they're on the same level as Ohio State. They are 14.5-point favorites on the road in Champaign against Illinois. Not on one of my best bets of the weekend, but I would lean on Ohio State if I had to pick a side there and take the 14.5. I just don't see this game being particularly close. Ohio State's defense is absurd. It's the strongest unit out of any unit in the country. Their defense was incredible last year. Newsflash, they're even better on the defensive side of the football this year. And Matt Patricia is clearly an upgrade over Jim Knowles there as well, calling the shots. You know, you question when coaches go from the professional level to the college level and vice versa, what that jump's going to look like. There's probably been more failures than successes, but clearly Matt Patricia is doing a tremendous job calling the shots defensively for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The front is real. They had to replace all those guys on the front, and the guys that they've brought in are the guys that have stepped up as they now have another year in the system and are ready to be the starters, have been tremendous. Caden Curry's racking up sacks, right? He's been a great player. McDonald, Atkinson, those guys all playing really well. The linebackers, best linebacker duo in the country with Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles. Those guys can play in the NFL, and they will, and they'll be very good in the NFL. Caleb Downs, in my opinion, the best player in college football, and their corners have certainly improved there as well. They are allowing 5 points per game. That is absurd. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns throughout the entirety of the season to this point. And Illinois, they're ranked 17th. There are some questions coming in about Illinois, like could they, be a dark horse in the Big Ten? And credit to them, they've played well, particularly on offense the past 2 weeks, but I just can't get that Indiana game out of my mind. I understand it was on the road, but they lost by 50 plus, right? They didn't lose by 10. They didn't lose by 20. Shoot, they didn't lose by 30. They lost by 50 plus. And when a team loses by 50 plus, it's hard for me to get behind them, especially going against the best team in the country here. Again, credit to them. Altmaier, the quarterback, he's a veteran guy. He's had a lot of experience now. He's played well these past 2 weeks. It was an impressive win coming off that blowout loss to Indiana, beating USC. By the way, we'll talk about them in a little bit. Impressive showing from the offense again against Purdue, but they're in a complete, rebuild mode. They're certainly not a threat whatsoever there. So I just don't think against this Ohio State defense that they're going to be able to score enough points, because Ohio State offensively, they are going to score enough points. I think Julian Sayin coming in that Texas game, I think they could have opened it up for him right away, and I think it would have been successful for Ohio State, and I think they would have won the game, and I think it would have been not nearly as close as it was. Obviously, it was a 14-7 game in favor of the Buckeyes there in week 1, but they're beginning to start to open up things more with Julian Sayin and throw the football down the football field. You saw it last week in the Minnesota game. He's ready for whatever comes his way, and they're going to score a lot of points in this game. And against this defense, despite the fact that Illinois has played really well over the past 2 weeks offensively, the thought of them even getting 20 points in this game is like, I just don't really see that happening. And the thought of Ohio State scoring less than 28 points in this game, I just don't really see that happening either. So not one of the best bets of the weekend. It was the 6th one. We have 5 this week, and that was the 6th one. Ohio State, don't have it on there, but I definitely would lean Ohio State, as I think they roll on the road against Illinois and continue their undefeated stretch here. Another great game at noon. This one probably going to be a lot more competitive. Alabama and Missouri. Alabama has certainly woken up over the course of the past few weeks. They have responded incredibly well to the blowout loss in week 1 against Florida State, where they flat out looked completely incompetent and uncompetitive in the football game. Nobody really giving Missouri a lot of credit. I don't know why. I get their schedule to this point has been very favorable. Their biggest win has been against South Carolina, who a lot of people thought could mess around here and potentially be a big-time threat in the SEC. Hasn't really worked out that way. Their quarterback, they've had some injuries there. But this is a team that's going to be really well rested. Their past 2 weeks were UMass and a bye. So, yep, they're going to feel good coming in this game. They're not going to be beat up. While Alabama, on the other hand, this is now their third consecutive week against a top 16 opponent, as Georgia obviously was a top 10 team, and then Vandy coming into Tuscaloosa last week is the 16th ranked team in the country. So Alabama, they're beat up, right? Quay Russaw, they're a really good linebacker. He broke his foot. They're without him. Yeah, they're really banged up just around the entirety of the football team. That's what happens when you play in the SEC and play really good SEC competition. Alabama's favored by 2.5 points in the game. I don't really get. I feel like it should be a pick'em, right? I think you could even make the argument that Missouri should be favored in the football game. There's a lot of matchups in this game that actually lean towards Missouri. Alabama is 104th in the country when it comes to stopping the run. Well, Ahmad Hardy, if you haven't heard of him, I think he's the best running back in the country, and they're certainly going to threaten Alabama running the football. I said earlier in the week, I'm pretty confident there will be a 40-plus yard game run from somebody on Missouri in this football game. Alabama, just even in the games where they've played really well, they give up big runs because their run fits defensively have stunk. When they need a safety or a corner to come in there and fit a gap, they don't do that, and the running back hits the hole and boom, he's gone. And I think Missouri at one point in this game, or probably more, will have a really, really big run. That obviously works against Alabama, and what has allowed Alabama to kind of really get back in the national conversation here and be viewed as a team that can make some noise in the college football playoff is the fact that they have Ty Simpson playing quarterback, and he's quarterbacking the best passing attack in the country for Alabama. But Missouri defensively, against the pass, they've been really, really good, leading the country in quarterback pressure rate and completion percentage allowed. Mind you, this game's in Missouri there as well. Defense and run game travels. Passing game doesn't always travel, right? So if Alabama's in a spot where Ty Simpson, isn't able to be as brilliant as he has been these past few weeks, and they're forced to, run the ball or do some different things, it could get a little bit shaky for Alabama. Again, I feel like this should be more of a pick'em, and Alabama, last I checked, was a 2.5 point favorite. They can cover well, but also on the other side of that coin, they haven't seen a receiving core like Alabama's with Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton, all the issues that those boys can present. Bo Perbula, by the way, can move. He's a good quarterback. He was the Penn State transfer. Kind of looks like at this point he should be the starter at Penn State. That's a conversation for a different day, but he can move around a little bit. He's athletic, right? A type of quarterback that Alabama has struggled with in the past. People look at the Vandy game. If you didn't watch the game, you see the score and you go, oh, Alabama, handled business at home like they always do. But they were struggling with Diego Pavia, as they do against quarterbacks that can move around, the RPO stuff. And, Pavia turned the ball over twice in the red zone, and that was the difference in the game. He doesn't make those two mistakes. Maybe, Vandy's able to pull the upset. So if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm very concerned going into this game. It's a noon game, right? Could you possibly have a hangover from the crazy games that you played the last 2 weeks, right? Against Georgia and, of course, against Vandy. Oh, and by the way, guess what? Next Saturday, that's the third Saturday in October, which means you got Tennessee coming to your place next week. So just an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. If Kalen DeBoer is able to navigate this, he deserves major, major credit if he's able to do so. But he's got to have those boys ready to go, because if they're in a situation where they fall behind early and the passing attack doesn't look like the passing attack of recent weeks, they could be in serious, serious trouble in this football game. And by the way, DeBoer's been great over the course of the past few weeks, and he was great on the road in Athens in between the hedges against Georgia. But barring that game, this is a Kalen DeBoer Alabama squad that has really struggled on the road. Did he silence that narrative against Georgia? Maybe, but we'll see how they look on the road this week against Missouri. That's at noon. That is a fantastic game as well. 3:30, two more bangers. Kind of wish this game was at night, but it's Indiana and Oregon. People view Indiana as, they're kind of a fraud, and here we go again. And they might be borderline fraudulent, but I can assure you they are better this year than they are last year, and that certainly gives them a chance in this football game. Oregon's really good. They're ranked third in the AP poll. I have them at 2, right? I think they're better than Miami, and I think they're that next team behind Ohio State that could potentially give Ohio State the best fight. 7.5 point favorites at home at Autzen Stadium. Oregon's last 42 home games, their record, ready for it, is 41-1 And the only guy to go in there and win is the guy we were just talking about, actually, Kalen DeBoer and that team with Michael Penix. Oregon's excellent. They're good all over the place. Their quarterback's good. Their coach is good. Their defense is good. Their offensive line, which was supposed to be a question because they rebuilt it through the portal. There have been some issues there, if it was going to be, or some questions, I should say. If that was going to be good, yep, that's really good there as well. And I think the key in this football game is Indiana going to be able to run the football? How's that offensive line of Indiana match up against the defensive line against Oregon? Because that defensive line against Oregon, there's some NFL guys there. They're big, they're athletic, they're fast, and they're pretty solid rushing the passer and solid against the run. Now Northwestern a couple of weeks ago did have some success running the football. Penn State, which is probably should be a run-first team, they didn't have as much success against Oregon. But Fernando Mendoza, people have been talking about him as a Heisman guy, right? Transfer quarterback. I think he's a step up from their quarterback last year, to be honest with you. And it's that RPO style from Cignetti, right? Are they going to be able to threat to run the football? And then that opens up the play action stuff, and then you can try to push the football down the football field, because then that gives you a chance. Indiana's got some guys on the outside. I really like those two receivers, Elijah Sarratt and Omar Cooper. They can make plays, but if there isn't a threat of a run game, I don't know if Indiana is going to be in a spot where they can throw the football well enough with Mendoza against that front of Oregon to have success in the game. And Iowa proved the other week that there's kind of a blueprint to sit in there and hang with Indiana, and it's get some pressure on the quarterback, as they certainly pressured Mendoza, and they didn't score a ton of points in that game, and it wasn't exactly super pretty for Indiana last week against Iowa. But that's also kind of just Iowa as a team, right? They're going to give you a really good fight each and every week. Kirk Ferentz, that's just kind of what they're built on, that program, and he's had a lot of success there, and has played in a lot of tough physical games. But some people are coming into this game and saying, does Indiana really have a shot? We'll find out early if they can run the football and how that offensive line matches up against the defensive front of Oregon. Dante Moore, if the season ended today, he would be my Heisman Trophy winner. He's really good. Kind of looks like a guy that could have success at the NFL level there as well. He's poised. Just the environment, the whiteout, Happy Valley, he was unflappable in that game. But he's also only been sacked once. And that's an offensive line, as I alluded to, that was rebuilt during the transfer portal. They've done a tremendous job. And if Indiana could perhaps find a way to get Dante Moore under siege, something he hasn't really seen this year, could that be beneficial for them? I'm staying away. I'm rooting for a really good game. The environment's going to be incredible at Autzen. Game day, I believe, is there. 7.5 is the line. And, I've been higher on others than Indiana. I had them at 5 this week. And, we'll see how they look. But Oregon is the real deal. Oregon is excellent. And that should be a phenomenal college football game. All right, 3 more here before we get into our best bets of the weekend. Oklahoma, Texas, Red River. Oklahoma is ranked number 6. Texas falls to being unranked after the loss to Florida in the Swamp last week. Texas, by the way, favored in the game. 1.5-point favorites. Kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. Now, there's a good chance that Oklahoma is without John Mateer. That's kind of up in the air. He had the hand surgery a couple of weeks ago. There was the Chipotle rumor about some guy ran into Mateer at Chipotle, and Mateer said he was going to play in the Red River game. Oklahoma obviously keeping it close to the vest. Venables did say he hasn't done any good stuff at practice, so don't know, really. I don't really even have a gut feeling on whether or not Mateer will play in the game. Michael Hawkins is their backup, and he'll get to start. Should Mateer not be able to go? Hawkins did play in the Red River game last year, and if you're an Oklahoma fan, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because they got absolutely blown out in the game last year and only scored 3 points. Texas's corner, their top corner, Malik Muhammad, he's up in the air. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? But these two defenses are real, both of them. And, I said last week that I thought the Texas defense was second in the country behind Ohio State. Well, now I think they're third, and Oklahoma is second. Oklahoma's really, really good on defense. Venables has them flying around, making plays. I feel like it's going to be a low-scoring game, which in the history of this rivalry doesn't really happen a ton. But I feel like it's going to be a low-scoring game. And when offensively, I even with a backup quarterback, it's hard for me to realize or figure out why Texas is favored in this game. Maybe Vegas knows something. But based on what you've seen from this Texas offense against, FBS opponents, has not been good at all. I mean, yeah, they've looked all right against Sam Houston State, who's one of the worst programs in Division I over the course of the past few years. But I just, what is the reason that, they're going to figure things out offensively and it's going to look a lot better? I just don't know if there's necessarily much to go on. I've been very clear that I'm still an Arch Manning believer, and I still believe in him. Might not happen this year, but at some point it will happen for him, and he did make some big throws in the Florida game, but that's a really good defense, and he really struggled against Ohio State. They're not as good as Ohio State defensively, but they might be the next best thing, and we'll see. I'm staying away from that game. Texas 1.5 favored. That is at 3:30 on Saturday. Two more, Florida and Texas A&M. Kind of a sneaky good game here as, Florida has talent. They have players. They have recruits. It's just they haven't been able to put it together, but they put it together pretty nicely last week. They were able to get after Arch Manning, do some stuff defensively, and the splash plays were there in the game for DJ Lagway, something he's very reliant on, by the way. And I think that's kind of what needs to happen again for Florida if they want to compete in this game. Which Florida is going to show up? Is it going to be the team that has looked horrible in the beginning of the year where Lagway was thrown to the other team, or is it the team that we saw last week against Texas? A&M, I really like them, and I kind of view them as the best team in the SEC. I'll just go out there and say it. I view them as the best team in the SEC right now. Why? It's because they have an ability to win multiple different ways. You saw it against Notre Dame, throwing the football with Marcel Reed. You saw it against Auburn. And to some extent, Mississippi State, where it's defense, running the football. So they have different blueprints in which they can win, which I think in college football is very, very important. And they do that. And, Florida does have, Dallas Wilson, who's been back, true freshman wide receiver. He's really, really good, and maybe he can help them out. But A&M, here's a stat for you. Their defense has allowed 1 third down conversion on their previous 23 third downs, which is a really unbelievable stat there. And, Texas A&M, they could do a really good job on defense. That environment, I think Kyle Field at night is the toughest place to play in college football. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't think it is. That place is going to be absolutely flipped upside down in that game, and we will revisit that in a little bit for our best bets of the weekend. And also Michigan USC, great football game. It was phenomenal last year at the Big House. Now they're in the Coliseum at USC. Obviously a different quarterback for both teams, as you have the true freshman Underwood for Michigan and Jordan Mayaba taking the reins, obviously, for USC, and he's done a really nice job. They do have the loss against Illinois, and this is a really big game. A really big game for Lincoln Riley. It feels like he needs to win one of these games here at USC. They've looked a lot better this year, and I think they're more physical this year than they've ever been, but he needs that kind of a signature win. And USC 2.5-point favorites in this game. Their starting left tackle might not play. Their center is also hurt. That's an issue against that front. Jayshon Barham of Michigan, he's a great player, and he's going to be looking to get after the passer there as well. Michigan's got some receivers that are kind of stepping up here. They've got a couple of freshmen that are really, really good. Andrew Marsh starting to pop on the scene, and obviously Underwood, the quarterback. And this is a guy that he's looked unflappable as a freshman. The moment clearly not too big for him, and he's played good football this year. And like him or not, he looks like he's going to be a really good college quarterback. And I would give. I get it's across the country, and in the Big Ten when you have these teams going to California, right? We saw it certainly with Penn State last week. They go to UCLA and they just weren't ready to go, and they get beat. Well, we'll see if that happens to Michigan. I don't know if Sharon Moore necessarily will let that happen, but USC 2.5-point favorites in that game, and we will revisit that game in a little bit as well.